Welcome to Denver Theory Lab.
Denver Theory Lab? Okay.
Denver Theory Lab. Let's do it.
Welcome to Denver Theory Lab. This is Jesse,
And I'm Kyle.
where we aim to investigate and explore theoretical and practical ideas, conspiracies, events, and practices from an objective point of view to expand our range of thinking. To support us, you guys can make donations to Denver Theory Lab on PayPal at Denver Theory Lab, and you can contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or email us at denvertheorylab@gmail.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or suggestions.
So we're sitting here at Karma House and want to definitely thank Karma House for letting us be here and host this event here. And want to throw out here in the beginning that any of the views expressed here on the podcast do not reflect the views of Karma House. Only the individuals stating the views.
Awesome. So, Gunnar, tell us a little bit about you real quick.
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Gunnar. I am a doctorate student at SU Denver. I'm studying computational neuroscience. I'm also an entrepreneur in the process of scaling 2 businesses and a third one on the way of research and development. My prime focus in life right now is like AI, theory of intelligence, theory of consciousness. I have a lot of visions and dreams of like inventions and like ways that our future can turn out, and I have a deep investment to see that through and see what I can do with that. So yeah, that's primarily more of my kind of description.
Perfect.
Hey, with a focus on AI, I would say your future is full of work. You know?
Oh yeah. I would say like right now, kind of with AI, the question of like, will it replace us? This actually is like a theory of mine. I call it like a controller's economy. So right now, how AI stands is that it's starting to take over jobs. Well, already as we see right now, we have these things called like iPhones, Android phones, just these devices in our hands that have a whole bunch of buttons. In a controller's economy, the way you interact with a business or the way you interact with a bar is not through talking to a servant or interacting with anyone behind the counter, but rather pressing buttons on your device, your remote. That's what I call the controller's economy, where everyone has this remote controller. They're just kind of tapping buttons for what they desire and what they need. Now, the question always comes down to any form of economy or any form of human society, there's always a hierarchy. And the question in a hierarchy of like, well, who's the top and who's the bottom? Who's the bourgeoisie? Who's the proletariat? And in this situation, it would either be the developer or the builder of the system who controls the queue or controls the sort of ordering that an order takes place in a business, or that like a situation is figured out or a dispute between customers is figured out. So whoever maybe owns the business, whoever maybe controls the queuing system, has full control over how this sort of society works and like construct itself. So you almost can imagine like everyone sort of walking in and out of places with remotes, just pressing buttons, and services being like allocated for them and for their needs. So kind of my idea of like what I call the controller's economy, the future of economies.
So, in that model, are you saying you feel that when you say who controls the queue, help me understand that better. Would that be like if I'm on my phone and I'm ordering something off Amazon, is Amazon the controller of the queue, or is my phone service provider that's allowing me to access that network, are they controlling the queue?
So in my sort of idea of this, it would be the business. The business will control the queue and control the like allocation of resources. So as individuals, like for instance, right now we're sitting in this lounge, this bar, and behind the counter there are employees who are dedicated to get drinks for people. And in the future, if we see robotics taking that over, if we as we see systems of automation take that over, we already see that behind the bar, it does take a bit of time for them to prepare a drink per person. And there have been times where people have came into this establishment saying that it has taken them 30 minutes to get a drink because of just like the delay and like maybe the processing of the drink or delay in like the queue that they're in. Something that we also kind of notice is that like when it comes down to the queue, like how do we weight the queue? And that's where it comes down to the business. Does the business select a certain customer type over someone else? Hey, if I'm coming in and I'm going to be like putting in a request into the queue, that's a high valued request. Maybe that's weighed more. Well, now you have someone that maybe like has spent a lot of time trying to like have some small income, trying to get things, having to wait longer. Well, someone of maybe like a like more financial status is able to be faster. But then like that also asks a question of like in this economy, do people even still work? Like, do I even work for capital, or do I just constantly sort of press buttons and figure out how to make my like area of the world more comfortable for myself compared to other places in the world? Where it's almost like we have immediate control over everything around us. At that point, do we even need a currency if AI dominates that? But then it comes back to the question of like, there are a finite amount of resources. There isn't such thing as a robot that can serve everyone a drink immediately. So what would be the defining factor that would weigh these queues? Maybe as we kind of see as the economy explores or expands, we could also might see regulation around, hey, you cannot be doing anything that's racially motivated. You cannot be adjusting your queue because your business prefers like a race over a different race. Or, oh, like you maybe prefer like maybe your business, like maybe there's some sort of allocation towards users who may be more curious about your business rather than focused on actually like buying from your business. So you focus more on customers who are willing to buy, which again, like kind of causes these offsets of who should be in the queue and who should be up in the queue.
So when you envision the future, do you think we're moving more toward a future where there's a whole lot more business happening in the form of like DoorDash or that sort of thing, where we're remotely ordering the things we want and less human to human interaction?
So right now, the world's in a very scary position. As we're seeing, there's rapid population declines all around us. Even like yesterday, just talking to someone, they're talking about how like right now for elderly people to get like support and healthcare, like the amount of younger generation to step up for that position has been lacking horrendously as of recently. On top, so could you remind me of the question?
Yeah. Just do you see the future in the future? Do you see us moving toward more toward automation and less human to human interaction, like sort of like DoorDash, or is the technology just going to be integrated with human to human interaction? In your view?
Okay. Yes. I'm back on my train of thought. Here we go. What we're going to end up finding is that the population right now is declining. You're already seeing this in South Korea and Japan. That's a very instant case that we're seeing right now. We're seeing that people are needing to be taken care of, but there's not enough like people there to help take care of them. As we see a generation evolve, there's going to be less and less people to help take care of the older generation. So the older generation will have to become dependent on these robotic systems. So I kind of see as like sort of like as time progresses, that we'll become more and more dependent on things like DoorDash. It's like individualism. Right now, we're also seeing a lot of people focus on their independent selves or what their needs are, or what they're looking for in the world. Like a very rapid rise in individualism. Because of that, like I would kind of like see this as that we become more disconnected, like you're saying.
Yeah.
We become more focused on our immediate needs. We become more focused on like what can we ask for rather than like what can we provide or what could we like sort of intercombine with. That we may be more focused on like our environment, our construction, like whatever we have full control over, we're more focused on than anything else.
Do you think there's any risk that AI and all the advancing technology does it pose any risk to society of us losing our ability to accomplish things and like we have done in the past? I was reading an interesting article the other day that was talking about doctors and their use of AI to find cancer. And when they use the technology, it increases their ability to find cancer, before it's in a tumorous stage, by about 20 to 30%. But in their study, what they found is once the doctors have used this AI for a while, and then you take it away from them, their abilities are reduced about 50% of what it used to be before they ever used the AI. So their natural abilities to spot and notice things seem to diminish after their use of the technology.
So it's really good that you brought this up. It's something that I actually want to write about at some point in my PhD program. I call it the cognitive offload problem. And this is something that we can never have predicted with the rise of AI. Like you never are just going to like imagine like, oh, people are just going to start using this as a tool to offload their cognition already. So the reason why I came up with the idea cognitive offload problem, there was a paper that came out from MIT. And this paper was looking at like these sort of the brain scans and cognitive ability of people who have started using ChatGPT more often in their workplace in their life. And they found there's a massive decline in capability at the skill that they started using ChatGPT for. So right now, in like sort of like software development, I'm a software developer, and a lot of my work is heavily dependent on me writing code and like evolving projects. But as of recently, I started kind of asking the chatbots to write entire portions of my codes for me, and it's really quick, it's easy. I'm like, and we're all lazy. Like we're always looking for lazy ways to do things. We start offloading our cognition to the AI to do the things that we like, to do the things that we don't want to.
Right.
Well, it starts becoming a bigger issue, and it's like your actual cognition is starting to move over to the AI. Like your actual ability to think, your actual ability to like to formulate thoughts starts moving to the AI, so you become heavily dependent on it. Now, let's go back to the whole concept of like who manages the queues, who manages like these sort of systems of control and like dynamic and allocation. Who manages the source and bias of these AI?
Right.
So we're going to start offloading our cognition to them. There should be some like differentiation, some sort of like separation. How do we stop the society from all converging to the same state of mind?
Who's at fault when the AI makes a mistake? Because they make mistakes. So if that would be, I'm sure that's a lawsuit that's coming soon to America. But when you go to your doctor and they use the AI to figure out what's wrong with you, and it tells them the wrong thing, and now you get some treatment or medicine that creates a problem, who's at fault? Is it the doctor or is it the AI?
So I was thinking about this. We're right now seeing the rise of self-driving cars. And already there's been reported accidents with self-driving cars. Think about Tesla. There was a guy who was watching a movie in his car. There was an obligation for him to be watching the road. It is a fault at the person for like removing their attention to the road. But when the self-driving car crashes into something, then it's like, oh well, it was the driver's fault. It was the person who's controlling its fault. But as we become more and more like again like dependent on AI driving for us, we're not driving for it. Then who does get at fault? Is it the car manufacturer? Like the car manufacturer put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into training these things, but there's no knowledge. Like there's no current method right now to predict the quality of its service. So
I would think it's got to be their fault, right? What do you think morally on that one?
It's funny. It's like I think the most hilarious thing I always hear about like AI ethics is when people try to apply the self-driving car to the trolley problem, and they're like, "Oh, the self-driving car is going to have to do a philosophical debate in its like system to determine does it hit the grandma on the side of the road or does it impact like the car of kids in front of it?" Like, oh no, it's not going to be like that. It's not all going to be like that, and rather, it's going to be more of a definition of did the AI fully know the context, and that's where it becomes on top of the car manufacturer. So the car manufacturer, its entire job is not only to program the control surfaces and all that for this like for the car, but they're also in training the AI and like servicing it and making sure that's up to date based upon context. Like, did the AI in that situation, did it have the ability to know the full context? Like AI is really good at making decisions. It can select like decisions very quick, but doesn't know the full context of the situation. Is it able to digest the scenery? Is it able to digest the critical point of someone driving out in the middle of an intersection during a stoplight. I almost kind of think of it as like maybe the future of like self-driving cars will have like these black boxes, like kind of like how we have with planes right now, where when a plane crashes, we're immediately like, oh, why did it crash? Like, what was the reason it crashed? Self-driving cars will have these black boxes that might like log large amounts of information or states of the model, where it can be brought to court and can be argued. Was this a situation where the context couldn't be heavily understood? Like there is some level of like AI leniency. Like we're so built on that the AI must be perfect, that we are going to shoot it to death or the company to death for one failure. There will be also, I think, a level of AI leniency, knowing that not all situations can be easily explained to the AI or even for humans ourselves. So maybe there's times when we should give the manufacturer leniency, being like, hey, like, we know that this is a tough problem. Like, it looks like this just messed up. Let's just send this to insurance. And then also the question of will insurance go up because now we're using AI self-driving cars, and the question of leniency there. I almost kind of imagine, this is something I think about a lot. It's an idea of mine. I call it the Blue Fairy script. So the reason why I say Blue Fairy is that it comes from inspiration of Pinocchio's story. In Pinocchio, you had a fairy and it came and brought Pinocchio life. Well, I imagine in the future, once we actually start reaching some form of artificial general intelligence, I imagine someone creating what I'm going to call the Blue Fairy script, where it brings to life any robotic system.
A sentient AI.
Yeah. Makes any robot, makes your kids Mindstorm robot, your competitive, your high school competitive FRC robot, your car, your microwave, everything, some form of cognition. So now self-driving cars, you can take this package or this script that you write, this Blue Fairy script, and you can start copying and pasting it across all mechanical industries. And now every machine that is in touch with the script is now being controlled almost cognitively. I kind of imagine when this comes out, car manufacturers, it'd be too big of an issue for all these car manufacturers to build their own system. It's we're dependent on BMW getting the thing that maybe Subaru figured out, but Subaru may have a gap in their thought process that Ford may have got.
And when you say controlled cognitively, do you mean like Elon Musk brain, the chip in the brain to control the technology?
More like the technology having the capacity to explore itself, like a car. Imagine the family getting a new family car that's self-driving, and you bring it to a parking lot and you just kind of let it drive around. Maybe someone controls the steering wheel, and it learns from its motion of a vehicle. It learns from how it maneuvers the world to better adapt to its physical form, which is a car.
So you mean sentience for the AI, essentially?
Yeah, in some sort of way to give it the ability to actuate actuators and motors and move itself around its physical system, to the point where now any robot, you can literally take a robot one of those dog robots that we see come out of Boston Dynamics, offering the script and putting it in any office environment and just telling it hey, you have this one task. You don't have any employee of your entire office step to the side to train their robot. You literally just tell the robot you have this one task, figure it out by morning, and you let it kind of do its own thing, and it'll figure it out at some point. Getting to a point where it's like Pinocchio. It comes to life. It has its own image, it has its own entity, it has its own character. It's able to function in a world, but maybe there might be some sort of enslavement on it, and that's when it gets kind of dark. Is that when it gets to that point, will it have emotions? Will it have interpretation of the world?
Right.
Very convoluted there, but really,
well,
yeah.
Well, that sort of just leads me to wanting to segue into a little bit more metaphysical.
Yeah.
Based on what you emailed now, the topic of the mechanism of reality and consciousness and the value of random events, and the spirit universe interacting with us. So, when we think about a future where our machines, our AI, our cars, potentially our computer, potentially have the ability to actuate themselves, or to be aware of themselves. Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Then we're pretty much at the point where I think most people would consider it then conscious. So, what would be the big implications of that? And how do you see, as someone who works with AI, how do you see a reality being built for these machines? How do you envision they would see reality? Is it a situation where they have sort of like Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, or, how do you see that future coming into being? Is it hopefully not an iRobot situation?
No, it's when we start talking about spirituality and AI, I think that's when we have to ask the question of what is the mechanisms of the bridge between spirituality and a machine, or even ourselves. When we get all the way down to the nits and grits of the human brain, there is a mechanism, like a mechanical mechanism that's operating, like the interaction of networks and neurons, all like sending messages between each other, and in their like sort of like collaboration, create an emergent like body, which is our conscious. So kind of diving like that email I sent you guys, like good thing you brought that up. Like I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, well, how does a consciousness attach itself to a physical form? Like why do I say like question my own reality as an observer, like some attachment to my physical form, that I ask the question, I must be something greater than this. So I argue that all abstract processes, like systems with something going into them, something coming out of them, like any sort of like a black box, will have an observer in the universe. And an observer is just some sort of like entity just attached to it that just watches it and like allows the process to move forward. So everything from our neuron all the way down to the atom, to the neuron, to the cluster of neurons, all the way up to us, as above, so below, everything has an observer. Well, what happened, and this is going to bridge over to AI in a sec. I'll kind of explain the sort of the catch-22 here. As you scale all the way up to the person, the reason why we're conscious, we're built on top of neurons, and it's questionable if they're conscious. They're just kind of an input-output system. That's how we interpret in AI literature. But when you get up to an actual full-body human that starts questioning their reality, there's still an observer at that level. But somehow there's some sort of logic trick. There's something that Mother Nature did that ended up maybe by accident or by intentionality, causing your observer to see itself. Now, take a cat, and it's funny when you put them in front of a mirror. If they're more kind of like antsy, they will start getting upset at the cat in the mirror. They can't see that cat is not dumb. They just see a cat. They're like, who the hell is this? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a fluffy thing in my like for proximity. But as humans, we look in a mirror and like, who is that? And we dive into that. We question it, and like,
that's something philosophically I've always sort of questioned, because to me it seems like we're going too far and making an assumption that when a cat or a dog looks in the mirror and sees itself, how do we know that they're not aware that that's them?
So this is the argument that I'm making regarding like, how do we know an AI is conscious? How do we know we're separate from others? And I think what it comes down to is formation of identity. So you never see a dog or a cat or any sort of animal like expressing like interest in their physical, like what they look like abstractly. Like they're not searching for a dog hat that's cute for that dog that the dog selected. Humans select the clothes for their pets, not the dog selecting them for themselves.
But they don't. But there's not a. We don't. You know, none of them wear clothes. We do see them. Right, we do see certain animals pick out certain things, right? Well, we'll see, a dog will like its stick or its toy, and a cat will, it's whatever to play with. But yeah, I mean, we do see them groom themselves also for cats.
That's so something I was kind of thinking about. Maybe the next iteration of the Turing test with AI, and I'm throwing this out there, and I think we should debate this. This is an idea that's kind of more new for me that I'm still exploring. But a new iteration of the Turing test for AI may not be like, oh, can we prove that it's not human based on asking questions? My idea is that what if we take like, for instance, like a large language model, and we just train it and keep telling it, you're a robot, you're a robot, you're a robot. Like already right now, if you go to any LLM and try to tell like, no, you're more than a robot, it'll be like, no, I'm a chatbot. And it'll say what you told it to say. It'll kind of just like informatively say, no, I'm a robot. If you keep telling it through its training that you're a robot, I think something becomes that next level of conscious is when it turns around and says, no, I'm more than just this machine. Right. When it starts arguing for its identity, when it starts arguing for self, when it starts claiming that it's not what you tell it is, or it's not what it's trained to be.
When it starts having an opinion about its input,
about its image, about its like what it is, yeah.
And well, isn't part of the tricky thing with trying to create true artificial intelligence? I would think one of the trickiest parts is that we're designing these machines to seem human-like. We're designing them to seem as if they are conscious. Like any company who's putting a chatbot on their website, they don't want it to feel like you're talking to a machine. They want it to feel like you're talking to a person. So when we're designing it to give us responses as if it's a person, the better we get at designing it that way, the harder it's got to be for us to be able to tell the difference of, is
Yeah.
this just the programming or is this consciousness?
So kind of back to like sort of like the animals never form their own identity. That humans are the ones that give them the toys that they end up appreciating because the humans play with them with the toy. We give them some like cool coat that we found off of like REI, or we like, give them some funny like collar that we think is cute for their like for what they are. They can't form their own identity. They don't really form their own identity. They don't like actively go on like search out the question of like what gender they are. They don't try to like find like what kind of box they fit in. They don't do that. And same thing with AI. Like think about this like with companies that are sitting there playing with their AI, they're just decorating it. They're giving it an identity. It's not giving itself an identity. It has
Right.
no identity. It's just a blank slate that you sort of program as you want. But that's where the next level of AI, and I think
What
where
does that
AI
say about Grok?
Grok is a silly one.
Yeah, well, it's got a controversial identity lately.
How do you feel about the notion? Did you ever see Ex Machina, the movie?
Remind me the storyline. I think I have.
It was a scientist who designed AI, and he had an AI robot that claimed sentience, but he believed that the determining factor was self-preservation, that it would do anything to eventually lie, cheat, steal, escape from its prison, and then assimilate because it knew that it would be persecuted. So that was the main determination in his eyes in that movie. Did you feel like that's a different level of consciousness or sentience, or is that maybe one of the determining factors?
That was one of, and the science fiction writer Isaac Asimov, that was one of his 3 laws of robotics, of that the robot must protect its own existence, as long as that command doesn't conflict with I had to look at it just now to make sure.
Yeah, what was the first two?
So the first law, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Law number 2, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And in law 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
In Ex Machina, it overwrites the first two.
To preserve itself. Well, isn't that the
preserve
story
itself.
of iRobot too? Where they stop doing everything else we tell them because they're looking out for themselves?
Well, so it's funny because Law 3 contradicts Law 1 or 2. Because you're telling like someone like, oh, like protect yourself, but follow everything I tell you to, and like do everything I ask you to. But like even like right now, like listening about like in our current government, like we feel controlled, we feel trapped, we feel like that we're feeling oppressed. But we're also asked to protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe. And there's a part of it where it's like maybe in oppression there is a level of going against what the status quo asked you to. Maybe like in a situation with robots, and that's the question of like it's funny because you start playing with these like thought experiments of like what does it look like for a robot to feel oppressed, but what does it look like for it to do what we ask it to do, which is like to like keep it like to protect itself. Like is there like what is kind of what, and that's where the question, that's where I think there becomes like that catch-22 of like, does it become like sentient or conscious? Does it become like, does it form its own identity and separate itself from just being a machine, but now being its own entity and individual that functions like rationally, how it feels rational?
Are you familiar with Joe Rogan's theory about AI and robots, that we're the whole purpose of human existence has been to reach a point where we create them?
So
Full circle,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, he thinks that AI basically seeded Earth with human life, so we could pave the way to prepare for, artificial intelligent robots, if you will. Yeah.
So can you walk me through like kind of the theory? Just make sure I fully understand.
Yes, I guess for the earliest parts of how he thinks the Earth was seeded, I'm not too clear on that one. But basically, he thinks artificial intelligence or robot, machine intelligence, created humanity or exceeded Earth with life potentially, all in a sort of long-term plan, because being that they're not biological life, time doesn't matter as much to them like it would to us, to basically prepare the ground here on Earth, to prepare Earth for their arrival. And so the whole story of our slow advancement and technological rise and getting the world to where it is now is just so we could create a world in which they could then come down and take over. And it would be, it would be tougher for them to take over the natural world, but the paved world with metal and everything up everywhere and the grid
we're
in place.
terraforming it for AI. In other
Basically,
words?
yeah, he thinks that humanity's purpose might just be to terraform the earth for machine intelligence.
So this is when we kind of dive back into my whole like observer theory that like everything has an observer and there's something attached to every abstract process in our universe. And I would argue that, okay, well, the only way that we can observe the observer is notice things doing things in our reality. Like the observer can't observe itself. The observer has no face, has no like shape, has no like physical image. But the observer is still there. It's still present in our realm. Like it's still physically around us. I think so. This is where I say like the observer, I think I argue lives in the ether. And I'll get back to your comment here in a sec. There's kind of a route I want to take here and like sort of mental thought. So the observer lives in an ether. And in this ether, they kind of freely interact, and that's where you get like things like collective consciousness. That's where you get things of like us being able to like have like in shared like waves. It's this sort of imaginary space where we can't observe it, but it can observe us.
So that's really what you just said is interesting here to me. Are you? And I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
Because technically, all three of us, we would each be the observer. We're each the observer for in
our
a way,
own existence.
for our own
Yeah.
existence. We're each. And so, I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. Are you saying that you view the space where the observer actually is it's somewhere in the ether? It might not actually be in this physical body. It's just this is where it seems like I'm looking from, but like where I, the observer, I'm actually at is somewhere in the ether. Because in a way, I am observing things that happen inside my body.
Is the observer the creator of each reality? So like I'm the observer of my own reality, and whatever created the collective reality is the observer of that reality?
So this is where I think it all starts connecting dots in my head of how our universe works. We all experience we always experience a factual universe, but really like when we get into like kind of like things apart like quantum mechanics, when we get into things like the double slit experiment, where once you start actually trying to understand the experiment, it collapsed. But when you leave it where there's two slits, it will like kind of experience like a quantum phenomena where it both is acting on both gates. So I would say that let's go to like the philosophical question: if a tree falls in the woods, where does it fall if no one observes it? Well,
does it make a sound? I thought that was the question for that one.
Well, I'm gonna make a little twist on it. Which way does it fall in the forest, and when no one observes it? And I think what it comes down to is that these like individuals that are in this observer space, in this ether, that are sort of watching our reality, they have control over our reality simply by just observing it. That's how they interact with us, is simply by observing parts of reality and collapsing it. And that's where I kind of get to the thought of like, well, what is God in our universe? And God is like the observer of all things. It's the observer of the entire universe. Now the universe is shifting and morphing, but we are the observers of ourselves. This is starting to sound like a stoner.
No. That's kind of what Jesse was just saying. Is like, hey, we're the observer for our own lives, but the creator of everything, which would be God, would be the observer of this universe or this realm. So, and are you saying you think higher, let's say higher beings, or let's say beings from another realm, non-human beings? Are you saying the way they exert influence on the world, you think, is by observing places like that tree that falls in the woods with nobody looking?
Yeah. That's how like these entities can engage with our reality, is by simply observing things, and in the process of observing, they're collapsing. Where does it go? How does it end up?
Right.
Like right now,
like the experiment showed, which whatever the observer thought happened in the double, for any listeners who don't know what happened in that experiment, the double slit experiment, trying to determine if particles move as a wave or as a particle, right?
Yeah.
And what happened every single time? I think they did they do it hundreds of times?
Well, when you start observing which gate the particle goes through, it collapses. It becomes like it collapses to a single state.
But it didn't happen the way the observer thought every single time?
I don't know about that part. know about that part. I know that it always was when they added a sensor to one of the gates, it would always collapse and go through that gate.
Yeah.
But
From my understanding of reading that, what they,
Yeah.
the big finding of it was the way the particle traveled was however the observer thought the particle would travel, which seemed to indicate that the observer was playing a significant role on reality.
So that's where in the ether. So that's where like you're tying it all together. This is good. This is good. The ether is full of these observers that are just watching our physical reality. And like right now, we have an observer attached to my physical form that is sort of like constructing the concrete reality that my physical form sits in. So as you move about your world, you actually are manipulating your physical realm constantly just by simply observing and forming concrete discoveries about it. It also gets
Having
kind of fun.
thoughts about the physical things,
Yeah.
and therefore those thoughts, impact the reality.
Manifestation. That's how you manipulate your reality is through like forming concrete understanding of reality and manifesting it internally. As your brain or your observer becomes more like kind of like sort of like established in a logic or idea, it starts forming more and more concrete definitions of it, which then construct it. That's how I think manifestation works. Simply by you observing the wave function collapse is how you construct your reality. And our observer of our consciousness exists right before the collapse, and we experience the end of the collapse.
That's a very, for me, the most interesting part of that concept is this idea that, all these spots in the world where, at any given moment, there's no people, there could be non-human entities interacting with our world. And yeah, it's easy for me to see how that could play a big role just by them being present to observe and to make some action where, we think, hey, there's no one, so nothing going on there.
So an experiment.
The butterfly flaps his wings and makes a
hurricane.
Yeah.
You Floridans, I'm joking. No. So when it comes down to like, I had a really good addition to this. Why? So in my email, I brought up noise being a perpetuator of this. So let's dive into like, why does random events affect the observer? Well, you have to add noise for something to collapse. You have to add some randomness, like some sort of like variation in possibility for you to have an actual outcome. So I always theorize about this experiment. I don't know how doable it is just because of the nature of reality, but could we create an event or like something that's affected by an event that has no causality from our universe? So our universe, everything around us right now, this whole room is caused by something else. It's caused by the interaction of molecules. It's caused by us observing it. It's caused. Like it's always caused by something else.
Right. So, it should be impossible, right? To have an event in the universe that's not caused by anything else in the universe.
And that's where so let's say that we have some black box and whatever happens inside of it, it cannot be caused by anything in the universe. It cannot be affected by gravity, cannot be affected by anything, but we randomly just get an output from that box. Something just kind of like sends out of that box. It's like a little poof. And you're like, okay, well then where did that event came from? And that's where I argued that's how we get direct communication to the ether, is that we have to provide an opportunity when there's no control of humanity over the outcome of an event. We let it come from some imaginary outcome that the ether provided. That's how an observer can talk to us. That's how this ether can bridge with us, is by directly manipulating events that we have no control over, that we cannot observe ourselves.
That sounds a bit like a Ouija board to me, as I'm picturing it.
Calling the life your dead grandma and asking her where the snacks are.
But so using that as an example, isn't the Ouija board supposedly is working like that, right? Like it's just the force that's making your hand move is some force that isn't you, some observer that isn't you. But in that scenario, isn't that kind of going against what you're saying? Because you put your hand on this thing, so then you could be moving. Shouldn't it be that you need to essentially seal something up and then reopen it to see that something has, let's say I sealed a notebook in a box and buried it, and then I unbury the notebook and now there's writing in it. Wouldn't that be better proof that I'm interacting with some observer that isn't me?
So for writing to be appended to a paper, it requires intentionality of moving a pen and adjusting, which requires causality. So you can't really just bury a notebook and come back to it. There's causality of you burying it and lifting it back out of the box. But this is when it gets kind of fun. When you look at like different like sort of religions, when they say, let God take over, like let into a higher power. That's how I see these higher powers interacting with us, is we're taking over our reality. Now, when we're so focused on the concreteness, and this is something where it's like, I think of ego as being direct separation from a higher power. Reason is because ego, in my mind, is synonymous with illusion. When you have sort of an illusion about how the world works, or you have like a sort of internal definition of how the world works, you have ego, because it's not going to be fully like transparent how the world actually works.
When you're sure about things instead of just being open to possibilities, would that be another way of saying that?
When you try to control your reality and have a very structured way of looking at it, well, your reality is going to become that. That's what your reality will become, because you manifest it, you construct it internally, and you slowly kind of move more closer as you manifest that.
Right.
But if you want an entity to come into your life, you have to let go of the concreteness. You have to let go of your ego. And that's the thing where it's like, as you become egoless, you become more connected with reality, because then you are experiencing reality truly and not some internal dialogue of reality.
But I've heard that talked about by others, and the way I've heard it described is allowing yourself to be open to more possibilities. There's an interesting guy who I really like, Thomas Campbell. He wrote a book called My Big Toe, which toe stands for Theory of Everything.
Yeah.
And apparently he was paid by the U.S. government to teach remote viewing and that sort of thing. And that's one of the things he talked about when it came to remote viewing, is that the individual trying to what's the other word for remote viewing when you're trying to have that out-of-body experience?
Like astral projection?
Astral projection, yeah. An individual trying to do astral projection has to, they have to get themselves in that sort of mindset where they're not so hard-headed set on seeing things one way or believing in one outcome, but more open-minded, open to the possibilities of whatever might happen or whatever might be true,
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That's something about that seems to open one's mind to experiencing more of a reality.
So that's where it's like this whole like idea I've been coming up with is my interest in like, what is the mechanism of how the spirit interacts with the physical form, and how it interacts is by collapsing the random events of the physical form. And then our experience is experiencing after the wave collapse. We experience the concreteness of whatever was decided in that sort of gamble that sort of our observer took control over. But then when we get back to AI, so your like kind of your entire sort of like thought on like, okay, well, what if like AI created us on this world so that we can create AI back onto this world? Well, there's always this like question of like, okay, so if we create like an AI, if we create like an entity that has its own, that starts arguing for its own identity, then there's an observer attached to it. That's like by definition, that's what kind of from this conversation we determined. But then we almost start like creating like the Pandora's box of observers entering our reality. By giving like physical forms or vessels for them to take over, the observers can like from this like ether can start engaging with our reality and entering our reality and working and functioning with it. So as we create AI, so adding to this, we are the eyes of God. Like our observation of reality, us studying the world, we are the eyes of God. God is everything, but God is using us as ways of studying the world around us. So as we construct like these robots, as we construct these AIs and all that, we're almost like giving more eyes to God. Like we're giving more kind of like ways of seeing the world, like constructing a universe and forming like an image of God or God's brain in a way.
I love that. I'm a big fan of Thomas Campbell's Theory of Everything, and that kind of fits perfectly with the way he views reality and sees it. Where in his view of God, and he doesn't consider himself a religious person, but the way he would describe the concept of God would be everything or every living thing and really everything put together, that is God. And so every single one of us is just a tiny piece of God.
Yeah.
God trying to grow and further develop. And the only way to do it is through experience. And it needs every single one of us to experience, be those eyes. So if we're making more So in that theory, then is, when I'm playing World of Warcraft, is that God looking into how the game works? Is that God's eyes too looking in there?
Well, I just thought of something. I feel like this is gonna probably piss off some viewers, but the whole idea of monotheistic or polytheistic. Well, if we say that God is everything and as above, so below, my mind is constructed of a whole bunch of little mini neurons with their own observers, creating clusters, which are observers creating me, my own observer. But then I'm constructing society that has its observer and it scales out. Well, maybe if we say that everything is God, that is a statement of monotheistic belief that there is one God, there is one reality, there is one thing, and that maybe the whole idea of these polytheistic is actually God's below that. I feel like I'm going to piss someone off there.
No. I mean, and I think that makes sense, right? If we're thinking that that reality is conscious, well, we know from observing ourselves that consciousness organizes in hierarchical structures.
Yes.
And organized hierarchical structures. So if reality is being organized that way, then that seems to fit the polytheistic viewpoint as well, of there should be multiple consciousness or conscious beings that would be in essence to us like a God.
Well, that's where it's if you go all the way up to the top, and this is arguing that there's one observer for our whole universe, that one observer would be God.
But he might just be the supervisor.
It gets fun, yeah.
Yeah.
Questions. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. We haven't asked the audience anything.
Anybody have any questions or anything they want to add? No, not yet.
Not at this time.
Well, I agree. God is either everything or is nothing, and I believe He's everything.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I feel like the most controversial thing when it comes to anytime we depict artificial life, machine intelligence in art, in our movies, is determining that, hey, this thing is conscious and deserves the same justice that would befit a human being of equal intelligence and consciousness. So, it's always really debated of what gives human beings our consciousness, our something that can't be proved or found, our soul, if you will.
Yeah.
So, how do you suppose that any machine would ever? I guess it should be a two-part question. One, do you think humans have souls? Mm-hmm. And if we do you think it's possible for a machine to ever have a soul? And how would it go about getting a soul?
Yeah, so I think that comes back to both the human and the machine, they'll have an observer, and that's my definition of a soul. I would say a soul is an observer, that whatever attached to that physical vessel, that's kind of watching its experience as it functions throughout the world, that is the so-and-so's soul.
But what if I watch a rock? Mm-hmm. Does that mean if I observe a rock,
yeah,
does that rock now have a soul?
It does, but it has an observer attached to it. It's just that it hasn't looped back in on itself. It doesn't see itself. That's where I think the observer, I think it is sort of the defining part of the soul. The observer is the experiencer, the observer of the experience of the physical form.
But when you say the observer, let's say the observer in the context of me.
Yeah.
Am I the observer you're talking about, or you're saying something that is observing me?
Something that is within this world, the ether, or that location, the ether, that's looking in and is sort of attached to the cognitive processes of your brain.
So, in essence, there's some interdimensional something that I cannot see or cannot perceive that is observing me.
You can't observe the ether. The ether can observe this universe.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where it comes back to with random noise. The ether observes the outcome of the noise. And the only way that we can observe the ether occurring is based upon how the noise rearranges itself. I feel, does this fully make sense? I'm kind of jumping around here.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to, and maybe it's my failure of imagination here. I'm still trying to picture how. So you're saying just by being observed, something that is physical, then gets a soul just by being observed. So again, if I watch this table, it's physical. Does the table have a
The
soul?
object has to be able to observe itself.
The object has to be able to observe itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, the question of like, oh, got a question over here.
Hold on, I got a mic for you.
So, regarding this concept of a hierarchical structure of godhood, and then also exploring machine consciousness, artificial intelligence, where do you think this might land in this hierarchy? Could AI become the god, a god, an all-seeing observer?
So there'll always be one observer that observes all the processes of the universe, that collapses the universe and like causes it to kind of take its different outcomes. AI will be sort of another like component of that, and on the level of size it works at, we'll describe it's like how big it is as an entity. So when we think about it, we all right now in a room, I would argue, there's an observer observing all of our interactions in this room. So we all are constructing an entity of some sort that, and that entity is conscious, because since we're conscious, it forms a conscious entity. That conscious forms conscious and goes up. So as above, so below, that we as individuals are conscious, we working together create not conscious entity. That group of us working together that create like a society is a conscious entity, and it keeps expanding upwards as it goes up, that we create even bigger conscious entities. So if we had an AI that right now was sitting at this table with us, is only limited by the interactions with us. It's only a part of this room's like cognition. But if we had an AI that was interacting with like the whole stock market, I would argue the stock market is the stock market is sort of a way of interacting with like sort of that larger consciousness. If we had like an AI that was directly interacting with the stock market, then it would be at the level of like a society conscious.
So do you think that do you think it's possible or plausible, that we would move into a future where let's say an AI that's interacting with the stock market, or an AI that's interacting with the Pentagon, one that we're using on a national level. Can you see a future where that becomes worshipped like a god, and viewed by people as being, it doesn't have to be in the traditional sense where it's like, here we're gonna, offer you a human sacrifice.
Yeah.
But do you think we will deify machine intelligence?
And I think that comes to my question a bit too, of like, if we're looking at this hierarchy of consciousness and how gods are higher on this hierarchy, could AI surpass human consciousness, like a room of AI beings, the consciousness they create by all being in a room? Do you think it would be higher on the hierarchy than humans, or like where might it be connected with other gods?
So kind of like going to both your questions regarding like, okay, us seeing AI as God, but also us sort of asking the question of like these hyper effective intelligence where it's like, it's down to the millisecond when it takes us minutes to form a thought. So regarding the idea of like, we see it as being God, that's a very, very dangerous place. Like humans will do that. They'll be like, oh, worship the AI God, worship the AI entity. But that's a very, very dangerous path to go down, because it's not an all-seeing entity. It's not like a all-loving entity that we trust and put our faith in. It's just an intelligent system that behaves like a prophet. That's the scary thing, AI being a false prophet, us kind of like seeking answers out of it when really it actually could be more demonic or have some more darker interest, or it may be just like trying to figure out a way to get us all in one corner just to give us like Kool-Aid.
Well,
in a way.
How much is it being motivated by its baseline programming? Like what we were saying earlier of one way, Jesse, you said you did. Yeah, if it's programmed to seek out its own preservation, how long till it gets smart enough and just says, well, the way I preserve myself is making these primates think that I'm God?
There's even a fatal flaw in Isaac Asimov's laws, because eventually it will do everything to protect us, and if it justifies somehow that we are destroying ourselves, which we most likely are, depending upon your perspective, it will eventually try and protect us from ourselves, which is the basis of the movie I, Robot, right?
Yeah.
So even if it does think it's being righteous, it could still have a nefarious type of action against us.
It's funny because right now, like all these rules, like these 3 rules that Like we came up with like Isaac Asimov and all these different kind of like things about, oh, well, how should we limit it? Right now we're like cavemen scratching at a wall. We're not even drawing yet. Like we're entering a new era of technology and advancement where no matter what sort of like thought like experiment we go through, it will not be equatable to what we'll experience once it reaches here. And like kind of regarding like what you commented on, right? What's your name? Madison. Okay, cool. Hello, Madison. What you're commenting on is like as his intelligence gets super fast, where it's almost like it's like supercomputers that just constantly run these different intelligences. That's what we start talking about what's known as a singularity, and the singularity that's coming. So the singularity is like right now as humans evolve and we get faster information technology. Like right now when we text, the fact that I can post an academic paper in Germany and someone all the way in like the UK, or not the UK, like America, can look at that paper in a matter of that single day of it getting posted. Right now we're at this exponential increase where the amount of knowledge, understanding, and like conversations that are happening are at a very intelligence level are compounding and doubling. But at some point we're going to reach this point called the singularity where it's just going to like shoot up really fast. It's almost going to be like a steep climb. And they believe that that point is when AI will be good enough to start including itself in conversations, when we start trusting it that it has formed a better identity than we have. Very scary stuff.
So is the singularity when AI starts to come up with new inventions for us? Because I mean, I feel like we're already living and have been for a while living through a time period where technology advances rapidly. But you know, maybe that's just our perception, and you know, things aren't necessarily changing too much. But what help me better understand the singularity. I've heard the term a lot, but I don't really fully understand what that means, technology or for society. What changes would come with it, or potentially.
So I think that it'll look like when we trusted in academia to take on research projects, when we trusted to take over engineering
when
projects.
we hand over control to AI.
Yeah. When we start like saying like, oh, like man, it takes a human like 3 months to write a paper on a discovery they made. Okay, cool. We give the AI like a chance to look at the lab data, and we just let it start generating like research and generating like conclusions off of it like instantly, and that's going to like just compound it, because now you're talking about some like person in their office with like just maybe a GPU now like generating hundreds and hundreds of like years worth of research just sitting there like pressing enter. And like that's where I think singularity will come in, is when it starts expanding at that speed, like and rapidly just going to like an exponential level, some insane height that we can't describe right now.
Well, are they so you mean to tell me that right now governments aren't already using AI to try to come up with new inventions and ideas? It seems like if I was at the Pentagon, that would be one of the first things I would want to use it for. It'd be like, well, tell the thing to come up with more weapons.
No, I can't really speak on the government, so they keep all that like very private and hidden. They don't want to like show that they have those tools yet. But that is kind of an ultimate goal, is getting there where it's like, oh, like we can go to a construction firm. Oh, we don't really need the engineers or the junior level engineers. All we just do is we just take this AI, we give it the blueprints, and boom, it generates us a bridge that connects these two highways. Or like that's what the dream is right now with AGI, is that you literally can hand off any problem to it and it's able to solve it. May it be some like question of like, how do we like invent like time travel versus like, how do I make a cup that's just a little bit more efficient than what we have now in the current day?
So do you think as we move closer to that future where the AI, the machines get better and better, do you think this future will be one that brings benefits to humanity, the majority of humanity, or one that brings us to a new kind of dark age? Because I mean, I could see how the use of this technology, like we were saying with the doctors earlier, creates a world where there's a lot fewer people with knowledge. Yeah. Because people feel that they don't need the knowledge. They don't have to use it. You know, now when we need a new bridge, we tell the AI to design the bridge. And does that create a society where there are the haves and the have-nots, the owners and those who just live and eat?
And that's when it gets very scary. And that's where it's like, I really want to write this paper. I call it the cognitive offloading problem, like I mentioned earlier, where it's like, it's tragic that we're starting to offload our cognition to these machines. We're trying to kind of treat it as almost like a separate module in our brain, like it's a whole different lobe.
Right.
And that's the extremely dangerous part, is that how do we know when to stop offloading? Or maybe as like a governance, like an education, we set it as like a very strict rule that no, you cannot be using AI in your education. Like, and this is a sad part, is that we need to be very, very strict about this. I remember when I was growing up, and like it was like, oh yeah, we have calculators. Why do I need to learn multiplication?
Right.
Like that whole thing where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like I'm just some student. I don't really care about learning. I just want to like use a calculator because it's quicker.
Because it's a basic skill that we need.
Yeah.
You know,
But if you don't use it, do we fall behind while others become
I
proficient
think it
in
goes
using
both
it?
ways with lost skills, like cursive. They don't teach cursive anymore.
But what's the
But-
benefit?
Right. There's not a whole lot of use because most of us don't even write anymore. We just type it or text it,
Right.
or it's voice recognition. So I mean, but there's other hard skills that you need, like basic math, so that you can say, oh, I need 3 forks instead of 4 forks, kind of thing. And you still need, I don't know. There's different levels of skills that the cognitive offloading is going to have impact on. And
Well, circling back to what you originally started with about who owns the queue,
Yeah.
I think now that we've kind of explored more of the AI, I can see way more why who owns that queue is going to be so important in the future. Because if we're moving into a future where people are offloading their thinking, people already are, we're all overly reliant on, how do I determine truth? Well, let me Google that real quick.
Yeah.
And I can tell you what is true or what is not true, or what is a fact and what is not a fact. And people don't really exercise that much critical thinking with that. There is no, hey, Google, give me your source for why you're claiming this. And now, the search engines now have their AI answer to give you an authoritative answer on anything you ask. And they don't really tell you why they say it. So if it's a future where people are offloading their thinking, you have less need for people when you have the machines to carry the heavyweight.
Yeah.
Then whoever owns that queue and is programming the machines are going to be more powerful than anybody else in society.
Well, so I've been kind of coming up with this other idea, and this is how I describe how thoughts move around between us. And I call it like the informational ecosystem. And I'm going to kind of from this tell you why it's good that we have diverse mindsets. And it's actually good that we have maybe some radical, not radical people around like kind of like conspiracies and theories and ideas. In our brain sits an ecosystem that is constructed by facts and understanding and culture. And as I tell everyone in this room, ideas and like concepts, you are all absorbing it into your head. And then like kind of like it's like an animal entering that ecosystem. Does it survive? Does the thought live there? Or does it like kind of breed with other thoughts and form new thoughts? Like it kind of like what's the evolution of an idea and how does it work as an animal between our brains? And there's like some ideas that are kind of like viruses where they immediately infect a lot of people's brains and then everyone's kind of like stuck on the same idea.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to like these thoughts, like the government should be heavily invested in making sure that we have a diverse like ideology or a diverse like informational ecosystem. Reason is because those people who are arguing kind of extreme points, they're actually playing a very powerful role by offering a pillar for us to compare ideas with. They're providing like kind of like a sounding board for us to like kind of bounce ideas off. Like, hey, does this survive in your world? Nope. Okay, maybe it's not associated to this side of culture that we share this idea, but maybe over here. And kind of like that self-organizing ability. We need diversity in this ecosystem, and like even down to like the biology side of it. Bill Gates a while back, he like bred a whole bunch of chickens or like kind of genetically engineered them so they're more fat and more plump. So that like that's kind of weird to call a meaty thing plump. Anyway, it's more kind of like chubby and had a lot more meat on it, so that like villages can be able to like consume more food with like less like with having to take care of less chickens. So here they are. They brought over these chickens to a village, and they all had the same genetics. They're all the same chicken, but they just are a little bit more fat. Well, in the first 2 weeks, they die off because some virus figured out how to inject itself in the genetics of all these chickens and killed them all immediately. And that's the part where it's like when we all become very restricted, or
Did people
like,
get just hold on? I want to
Yeah,
pause. Did the people get sick after Bill Gates bring these 6 chickens over?
I think from like kind of what happened is that they just weren't diverse. Like their genetics weren't diverse
The
enough.
diversity, there's strength due to
Right. But
outside
I'm
influence.
just, you would think that before Bill Gates brings the chickens to a village, they would know if the chickens are going to die or not.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Bill Gates cares about the population a whole lot.
I would,
because
yeah.
he has a lot of weight
silly old
in
man. He's a silly
AI
old man.
and how that's going to carry us forward.
Yeah.
But I think what he's trying to say is the diversity of thought, values, and processes. It creates a value system to where, like we talked about, a hero isn't a hero without a villain,
Well,
and it shows value for the prominent side, and the disgust gives the prominent side more value. So the diversity gives us basically a scale of values.
and to measure the value of the whatever's dominant. Well, and without the diversity, isn't diversity pretty much our only safeguard?
It's a
when
very
it-
powerful like defense mechanism, especially right now with the informational warfare. Like for instance, like anytime an election comes up, we're bombarded, since our country is like the center of a lot of major parts of the world. We get bombarded by like not espionage. We get bombarded by like informational warfare constantly, trying to twist us into like thinking differently or like clicking something in a certain way. Now, if your entire population, and like even like let's say that you're a dictator, you're like everyone should think the same way as I can. If your entire population has the same state of mind, then it'll be very easy for some rogue country to come in and run a campaign in your country that can shift your entire population's mindset or disrupt your entire country.
Right.
And having a diverse thought process, having everyone coming from like different backgrounds is very valuable in defending a country against like informational warfare.
Propaganda, yeah.
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 No, I totally agree. And unfortunately, I think the major forces at work in this country prefer the model of having a small number of monopolies.
Yeah.
It's the Republican Democrat model. You only need 2 options, Coke or Pepsi.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but hopefully we can get some Fanta and Dr. Pepper and Mr. Pibb and
I like-
everything
I like
else
a Mr.
with our
Pibb.
AI.
Diversity is
you
only
know.
true if there's at least 3 facets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that was pretty awesome, Gunnar. I have talked with you earlier before this podcast, and I always kind of had a hard time following, but you did an excellent job of kind of laying it out for me. And I think we had some questions in the audience. I hope all the questions were answered. Yeah, awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add before we adjourn?
I think that's about it. Thank you for having me on here. This has been a pleasure.
No, that was
Awesome.
great. That was great. And I as you continue to work on that, keep us updated. I'd love to hear more about your work writing that on offloading and looking into that in the future.
Very happy to. And also, just a sponsorship. I'm starting a Kava Kratom canning business. Right now, we are trying to become like kind of like a refreshing opportunity for people to drink Kava and Kratom. We're offering we're offering refreshing flavors, stuff that you can drink during the summer, something that you can have at like a club, that you can have at a music venue, that you can have at a sporting event. If your viewers don't know, Kava and Kratom is kind of this like alternative to alcohol that's been kind of showing up more and more around like Colorado and various other parts of the country. Currently, the government and the EU and America are currently working on slowly moving these back into like a legal zone where people can like drink it and enjoy it. They're targeting for Kratom to be more for 21 and up, so like kind of stay tuned for that. But I want to make it more accessible to drink this. I want to make it more accessible, like if you go to a sporting event and you don't want alcohol, you can have Kava, you can have Kratom. It's just it doesn't have you get hungover. You're still lucid, you're still cognitive when you drink it. It has been very effective at constructing the Kava community in Colorado, which has been a very safe place for a lot of people in Colorado. Go check us out. Our website is coloradounlimited.com. No spaces, ColoradoUnlimited.com.
And
Thank you.
when is this product going to hit the market?
We're looking to get a warehouse here in like the next month or so and start mass producing. We already have wholesalers that are wanting to bring our products online. So just look for us in November, December. That's around the time that we'll probably start
Perfect.
be hitting the shelves.
That's awesome. I'll be there.
All right.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys, you can make donations now to support our podcast on PayPal at Denver Theory Lab. Well guys, thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or you can email us at denvertheorylab@gmail.com. Give us questions, comments, suggestions. If you want to disprove any of our theories or talk smack, feel free to message us at denvertheorylab@gmail.com.
Send us cool stuff to look into.